Welcome to the Your Courageous Life podcast, where we explore what it really means to transform fear, burnout, and perfectionism with the practice of courage. I'm Kate, author of the books 100% Fully Alive and The Courage Habit, creator of YourCourageousLife.com, and head of the CLCC Coach Training Program at TeamCLCC.com. If you're someone who feels deeply, thinks critically, and wants to stay grounded in a world that can feel like too much, then this is the podcast for you. Learn evidence-based and heart-centered tools to practice courage so that who you are on the inside becomes how you live, lead, and show up on the outside. And now, let's get into today's episode. This is one of my favorite things to do. And it's going to be about how to create a personal roadmap for the year ahead that actually works for your family life. And before you start to go, I'm not one of those planner people. I'm not a New Year's resolution person. I don't do this. There are a couple things I want to say. Number one, I used to be you. I used to be like, I'm just not the kind of person who. And I had this idea that creating a roadmap, resolutions, setting goals, things like that it was just all really rigid. And I wanted to be all spontaneous, creative energy. It felt too confining and too constrained. And the way that I do this process has changed and shifted a little bit year to year. I'm sure there's actually probably other episodes somewhere in the Your Courageous Life podcast where I talk about things like setting goals and things of that nature. So this one might be a little different. But essentially, I am such a diehard for setting some kind of roadmap for the year ahead. If you want to call it New Year's resolutions, great. If you want to call it business planning or personal planning, great. If you want to call it a roadmap, whatever it is, I'm such a fan. Because it is so satisfying to go through the year and have this experience of knowing that you are learning, that you are growing. There's a sense of purpose. There's a sense of feeling stretched in a good way that comes with that. And there's so much crap going on in the world around us. There's so much going on politically. There's so much going on in terms of our lives, feeling like all the stuff we don't want to do crowds out the time that we would love to allocate for stuff we do want to do. And it's so easy for this kind of scope creep or task creep from all this other stuff that you don't really want to be doing to just take over your life. When you create a personal roadmap for the year ahead, you are essentially saying to yourself and to the people in your life, I am prioritizing things that will bring me joy. I'm not going to let all the pings and the dings and the notifications and the hard things that are going on in the world crowd out me prioritizing the things that bring me purpose and a sense of joy. And if you have felt like I don't have the time, we're going to talk about that today. Because I've felt that too. Again, this is going to be specifically how I create a personal roadmap for the year ahead that works for family life. So I'm actually going to talk to you about some of the conversations that I have with my husband as we plan these things out. Second thing I want to say for anybody who's been very like, I don't do the goals, I don't do the resolutions. There are people who actually say like, I hate New Year's resolutions. Gently, I want to challenge you on that. You don't hate New Year's resolutions. There's nothing wrong with New Year's resolutions or setting goals. What you hate is how you feel about yourself when you don't follow through. And if you change your capacity to follow through, if you really set a roadmap for yourself that feels good and then you follow through on that, it's like, wow. Again, it's this way of prioritizing. A personal roadmap is a way of prioritizing your joy. I mean, no wonder so many people look back on the year and they go, well, this was a crap year. And then, you see all the social media posts where people are like, so glad this year is over. Can't wait for fresh energy in the next year. But every year they make those same posts. And so this is what I want to help you get out of today. So let's get to it, okay? All right, creating a personal roadmap for the year ahead that works for your family life is not just a list of stuff. It's truly a roadmap. So we want this to feel like something that can guide you through the year. I also want this to be something that feels human and flexible and rooted in who you are, not in who you think you're supposed to be. This is not something you have to do just if you have a business. You don't have to have a business to do that. And this is not something where you have to blow up your whole life or your whole identity or, all that stuff. It doesn't have to be so complicated. I also think that if you follow this process, you'll really start to see why it is that a lot of people in January start to set goals that are unrealistic or misaligned. Then they don't follow through. Then the guilt sets in. Then they go, I don't even know why I bothered. And it's because they feel disappointed in themselves. If you would like additional resources to be able to guide you in this, head over to yourcourageouslife.com/begin. Sign up to become a subscriber, and you will get access to the brand new 2026 Courageous Living Planner. And even if you're not listening to this in January or February of 2026, this is a planner that is very evergreen. It's got some guiding questions for you throughout the month. It's completely free to subscribers. So head over there, grab it. You can print that mother out, and it can guide you with some great questions as the year is going on. Okay, so let's start getting into what you're going to do. Here you are. We're going to try to use this as a working session. Here you are, and let's go through this piece by piece by piece. If you want to grab a piece of paper and a pen, or your favorite markers, or your glitter pens, or like whatever you like to do. And by the way, I have so much fun with this process. My planner I've got like glitter tabs on my planner. I've got stickers on my planner. I just make it fun. So do that if you want to. You can transfer anything that we're doing today to something later. This is about like doing it in the way that works for you. We're going to be focusing on things like alignment and things like consistency, because I want you to build your year around what feels good, not a forced outcome. I want your goals to really feel aligned with your most confident, most courageous self, not your fear, not your self-doubt, not what you think you should do. And I also want to honor the part of you that has some ambition and the part of you that wants to have bandwidth for all this. Okay? So step one, this is a newer thing for me. Starting with how you want to feel rather than your goals. There have been some years where I'm at the starting line of the year, and I just know at a gut level that this is not going to be a stretch year. That doesn't mean that it's going to be a bad year. I just know that it's not going to be a year where I'm really going to want to like stretch myself and like put a lot in. I think that years have different flavors to them, and some years are expansion years and some years are contraction years, and that respecting that is very aligned. I mean, when you take a breath, you inhale and you exhale. So to plan in that way, to think of different years as being that way, I think is very natural. So let's start with this question. What are the feelings that you most want to feel during your day? What are the feelings that you most want to feel during your day? Excited? Calm? Maybe fully alive? And so you write down some of those feelings. And if you need to, go ahead and pause this. And then you start asking yourself, what are the experiences that will create those feelings? So any goals that you're going to create this year, and we're not even there yet. We're not even with setting a goal. We're just talking about what's an experience that will create those feelings. So as an example of this, people learn by example. So I want to offer you one. One of the feelings that I want to bring into this year is expansive, not expensive. Although I don't want things to be expensive for me, but if the universe is like, hey, I'm sending you some expensive energy and the money to go with it, hey, I'm listening, baby. But I'm talking about expansive, meaning I feel expansive. To me, that means I feel expansive as in moving into and expanding my capacity. It also means expansive, as in holding the room and having the space, the container to hold it all. It also means expansive, as in learning. So experiences that create those feelings for me are things like building time into my planner every single month where I have a day, like a full 24 hours to just be. No appointments, no push to do anything, time to just be. So that's an example. I want to feel expansive, and an experience that could create that would be building in these, I think of them as buffer days or do nothing days. Some other feelings I want for this coming year are regulated. I highly value feeling regulated. So again, same thing. I started going, what are some experiences I need to feel regulated? Courageous in a, this is stretching me, but I like it kind of way. I think there are different flavors to a lot of these feelings. And so sometimes you might find that you name a feeling, but you want to add a little bit more context, because there's courageous in a like activism, standing up, using my voice kind of way. There's a courageous in a, this is stretching me around boundaries kind of way. There's, there's these different flavors of how you want the feeling to show up. And so you might want to add some of that. And then once I've identified how I want to feel, then I'm making the list of goals. Making the list of goals. Let's talk about that, okay? What are the goals? A lot of times people get stuck around this. And I always find that so interesting because, if you think about it, a lot of us have a lot of ideas about what we wish was different about our lives. Like this shouldn't be this way. I don't like that my life is this way. And then you start asking people, well, what is it you do want? And suddenly people start drawing a blank. So what is something that would be just so fun to do this year? What is something that would be really cool to learn this year? What is something that you just have always wanted to experience? And so if you need to, or I encourage it, pause this podcast and take a moment to write down things like that. It would be really cool to do this. This would be fun to learn. I've always wanted to. It could be so interesting if. I always put a learning goal on my list of goals. I always put this would be so cool on my list of goals. And I don't even limit it at first. I know that everybody says, make sure you prioritize your goals. We will get there. But I think that the best kind of goal setting, the most aligned kind of goal setting for a personal roadmap is fresh, open, creative energy. Just like get it all down there. Again, if you need to, just go ahead and pause this, take some time, just write it out, even if it's unrealistic. I want to travel the world this year, and your brain's already going, yeah, but you have a salaried job, babe, so good luck with that. And it's like, no, I'm writing it down. That's all I need to do, right? No one ever died because somebody wrote down a goal on a piece of paper. Just write it down. It doesn't have to be a thing. Once you've written down a big list of goals, now, great gut check to do. Look at how you want to feel this coming year. Look at the goals and then start kind of connecting the two. What are the goals that would actually cultivate more or the most of the feelings you want to have? What are the things that would really make you feel the feelings that you want to feel most often? Again, pause this as you need to so that you can write these sorts of things down. And then before we move on to the next piece, I just want to say, take being realistic off the table right now. Take it off the table. Really go in the direction of, but what if? Again, I think in the same way that all of these, the world is swirling and it's chaos and I'm stressed, and the economy and my kids' school is pinging me 10 times about something that Like, try to think outside the box in this process. Try to be in a space of excitement, because in the same way that all those external circumstances that crowd into your time and keep you from prioritizing yourself can be at play, when you are trying to say, here's the personal roadmap I want for my year, all of the critical thoughts start to crowd in. All the, but who will have time for that? That'll be too much. You're not the kind of person. It's like, hold on. This is not the space or time for that right now. The space or time right now is, how do I want to feel on a regular basis? What are the experiences that could create that? What are the goals that I have for myself? Something I want to do that would just be so fun to learn. This would be really cool. I'd be really proud of myself if I ever did this. I've always wanted to. And you start creating that list of goals. Okay. Once you've done that, next piece. And I think this is another piece that trips people up if they don't attend to this. How can you make tiny habits from those goals? So for instance, you've determined something you want to learn, something that will stretch you. How can you create a tiny habit that goes with that? So let's just use the example of, you have a goal of writing a book. Okay? A tiny habit that can go with that is to write for 20 minutes a day. And I am here to tell you, as somebody who has written books in 20 and 30 minutes a day, you are going to get so much further with a small habit that you stay consistent around than you will with the pressure of, okay, it's January. If I'm going to write a book by the end of this year, I better write my first 5 chapters during month 1. That's the only way I'm going to stay on track. If you create a small, doable, consistent habit, something that you will return to that is repeatable, that actually can function a lot better for you in most cases than having an output goal like, I have to do this much. Okay? I'm doing this around my business, for instance. One of the goals I'm working on this year is doing more speaking engagements and organizational development consulting, which I've done in years past, but in a very limited capacity, because when my daughter was younger, it was a higher value for me to be home more, not to travel as much. And of course, when you have a really little kid, there's often just less bandwidth, or at least I had a lot less bandwidth. But now that my daughter's older, I have more bandwidth. So this year I'm going to be doing more speaking, more org consulting. And that means that I'm going to be reaching out more to people. I'm going to be connecting more with my network. And instead of having a goal of, I have to land this many speaking engagements per month or something like that, which outcome-based, yes, can be very motivating on some level, but then it's like all the stress of, but if I don't get there, I don't want that. That isn't aligned with how I want to feel. So instead, I'm just going, okay, I'm going to, work on this sending out pitches for X minutes per week. That's a smaller habit that feeds into that larger goal of, okay, doing more speaking and organizational development. So I actually have time on my calendar where I sit down, I look at what I'm pitching, I'm conferring with my VA on how we're going to send things out that month, when we're going to send what and to whom. And it's just, here's the time I'm putting in, rather than, oh my gosh, this like tight, clenched, gotta stay on track with landing a contract. Ooh, don't want that energy. And also, I can't control that energy, right? Like I can control the time I put in. I can't control whether or not someone says, yes, I'd love to have you come speak about courage and burnout and all of that in our organization. And I think that when we start the year and we put these really super huge goals on our lists and we don't know how we're actually going to attain them through small habits, we either end up getting burned out because we're so focused on that outcome of landing a certain number of clients or contracts or chapters of the book or whatever it is, and then we don't really know how we're going to achieve the larger goal. So if the larger goal, yes, of I want to do more speaking and org work, but the way that I'm getting there, the way that I'm putting the time into my life so that it stays aligned with my family, so that it stays aligned with my feelings that I want to have on a more regular basis, and creating expansiveness is a little different than just output that is tied to an outcome. Okay. So again, same thing, always pause, do what you need to do to start pulling some of this together. Pause the podcast. I'm going to go to the next piece, and then I'm going to really pull in how I talk about this with my husband. Because anyone who has ever needed to organize like a family calendar, different things are going on, different people in the family have different needs, it can be a lot. So the short way of describing this next phase of planning is to identify constraints, identify space, and then prioritize by quarter. So I do my goal planning in December of each year. And if you're starting this in January, it is not too late. It's all good. And what I do is I basically talk to my husband. I say, can we get some time to sit down with our calendars and go through what we're doing this year? And so that's what we do. I mean, we literally, like, we sit at the dining room table. He's got his calendar. I've got my calendar. And first thing we ask ourselves is every single thing we would like to do over the course of the year. So when we first sit down and do this, that is actually the part where the most nervous system regulation is required, because he starts talking about the things he wants to do. He loves to backpack. He is on a men's team, and they have different events that they either put on each year for other people in these like local men's team chapters that he's a part of, or things that he wants to do with his dudes. I have certain, as I mentioned, like for instance, the away days for myself so that I can, just get some buffer time and think. I already have speaking engagements for the year that I want to put on the calendar. I teach. I'm director of training for CLCC. I have organizational development contracts. I mean, there's all these things that, like, it's everything. We even put down like family vacations, family visits, things like that. This is the most overwhelming part. This is also the part that's really challenging, my husband and I, because I think it's really natural actually that both people really want all the things that are on their list. My husband wants everything on his list. I want everything on my list. We both know that we're going to have to prioritize, and he's going to have to drop some of the things that aren't priorities if we can't make them work, and same thing for me. So first things first, we're putting everything down that we want to do. By the way, we're also putting in like home repair projects. We're putting in everything. Okay. Once we do that, and this is all like penciled at this point, nothing's in ink, nothing is for sure going to be kept at this point. This is like the equivalent of putting like Post-it notes on a wall, and we're going to rearrange them accordingly. So nothing is permanent. Next thing we look at is constraints. What are the months that already feel jam-packed if we did everything we wanted to do? So just thinking about this most recent planning session that I had with my husband as an example, April was like the whoa month. April was a month where there were like things that I needed to do, and all hands for his job. There just was a lot crammed into April. And so the first thing we're identifying is, where are the constraints? Because the thing is, those are the months that if you try to force it all in there, you're going to burn out. It's not going to feel good even if you achieve everything you wanted to achieve. So you got to look at like what is not feeling aligned. And this is also sometimes a hard conversation, because again, these are the times where we have to make choices and decisions to go, this feels like the kind of full that is a stretch, but ultimately we're going to look back on this month and we're going to go, hey, like, work hard, play hard. We did a lot and it was kind of woo, but like in a good way, versus we had no space and it felt constrained. It felt too tight. It felt like gosh, this isn't the way I want to live my life. There was just no room. So we know that if we cram it all in, assuming that everything will get done without creating space, we'll just burn ourselves out. And these are the times where we have to have those really nuanced conversations about what do we want life to look like and how do we want it to feel, and what have we tried to put into this particular month that could move to a different month. And then this is also where we start to deprioritize. So if there's an item that we want into our lives, if there is an item like a backpacking trip he really wants to take, and I know it might seem kind of weird that I'm bringing in these backpacking trips, but based on weather, there's only certain months where he can go. There's certain weather conditions up in the mountains and things like this where it's not even safe for him to backpack during those times. So we do have to be mindful of the types of trips he wants to take and the locations he wants to go to. Same thing, we could go with a different example, which is speaking engagements. If I'm speaking at a conference, it's not like I can move the dates of that conference necessarily. So this is where we have to have hard discussions of maybe I'm not going to be able to speak at this particular conference. Maybe he's not going to be able to take a trip to a particular location this year. Maybe it's going to have to go to a next year. And this is a back and forth discussion, and one in which we have to keep going over and over and over. Okay, is there anywhere else that we could put this thing? And if we can't, then it's like, okay, you got to decide. Like, I might not pitch to be a speaker at a particular conference in the month of April if that is our busiest month and we have too many other things going on, or he might not go on his trip. And these are the discussions that we have to have. But you notice in the examples that I'm giving, I keep coming back to how would this feel and what is it we really, really want? It's a different approach than just, yes, everybody gets to do these things. Everybody's going to do these things. We're going to do them, and that's what matters. Check, check, check. We did the things. It's about knowing how we're going to feel the way we want to feel in our lives. We also, by the way, plan these things out quarter by quarter. So my husband and I right now, we have only planned the first 2 quarters of the year very intentionally, because what we have found is that too many other things pop up by the end of the year for us to really plan much more. Now, there are a couple things towards the end of the year that we already know about, fixed dates, things like that. But we don't start filling in a lot beyond June. We just know that there's just going to be too many things that are going to be moving around once we get more than 6 months out. That is a different energy, by the way, than I bring to my business planning. My business planning is a whole separate ball of wax for me. I plan the entire year. and that is just a very different thing. And that's because I need to know what myself and my team are going to be focusing on every single quarter. But that's happening during my work hours. And so that's not quite the same thing as that personal roadmap where the calendar dates are moving around and I have to take into account things going on for my daughter, things going on for my husband, things like that. All right, let's get into the next piece. And this is something that my husband and I build into our lives. Build in support before you need it. Most people set goals and they hope that they'll have the time. They hope they'll have the energy. They hope they'll feel motivated. And when they're doing the goal setting or they're developing the roadmap, they're like, yeah, it's going to be so great. But living a life where you really feel good, it ain't about hoping. It's about planning for reality. So you want to ask yourself this question. What will help me stay connected to myself when it all gets hard? What will help me stay connected to myself when it gets hard? And this goes into your planning with your family as well. So there are things that my husband and I are asking ourselves, like for instance, one of our traditions is whenever we have our anniversary, we always go out for an anniversary dinner. We don't do it as just a date night. We actually bring our daughter with us. And we go to one of those restaurants where it's the full shebang. We do, the charcuterie board to start off, and everybody has an appetizer, and then we get a dinner, and we do dessert, and it's like super fun. And we always go to a nice place. And when my daughter was really, really little, we always dress up still, but when she was really, really little, it was so cute. She'd wear her little Elsa dress from Frozen and like a sparkly crown and everything, and she'd be waddling through the restaurant. It was so adorable. So she still comes with us. And so we put this onto our calendar and we reserve the time for it because we know that having those sorts of dates, a birthday dinner, an anniversary dinner on the calendar, helps us stay connected to ourselves and to each other, even though there are many other things going on other weeks of that month. So essentially, support is part of the strategy. I have already mentioned that I put these like away days to plan and things like that. That's on my calendar. Booking in a massage once a month, that's on my calendar. Support is part of the strategy. A couple other things that I make sure are on the calendar, and this is something I really have to think a lot about given work and other obligations that go into running my business. But I also have created these as daily habits. One that is non-negotiable is exercise. I feel like exercise is like, it makes me a powerhouse. Exercise equips me with the ability to do and have capacity for all the other things that I do in my life. It relieves stress. It makes me feel more capable. But let me make no mistake, okay? I'm no different than you. The voice in my head will often go, oh, you know what? Skip exercise today. I mean, you've got a lot going on. Or even, but I'm tired and I'm genuinely tired. Now, if I noticed that not listening to that voice was causing me to go into burnout, like if I noticed that I was hearing that internalized voice going, you could skip today because you've got a lot going on. And then I said, no, I'm not listening to that voice. And I exercised and then I was burning out. If I heard something or felt something within my body that said, you're really tired, you should skip exercise today. And then I skipped and then I was just like burning out. That would be one thing. But I'm going to be real with you. Here's what I've found. And this is like a 100% track record. 100% of the time. I can't think of a single time when this hasn't been true. I always feel better after a workout. Always. I can have a sticky business situation on my mind and I go for a workout and I feel a million times better afterwards. I can feel tired and I go for a workout and I suddenly have energy. So I just don't give that voice power anymore. So exercise is non-negotiable. I don't skip. If I'm sick, if I literally have the flu, yeah, I would skip. But I'm talking about just if I'm just going through my day, my week, my whatever, no, I don't do it. If I think that I'm more physically tired than usual, maybe that's not the day I'll go for a run. Maybe that's the day I do just a little light weightlifting, some yoga, maybe just take a longer than average walk. Sure, I might scale it down, but I don't skip. The next thing that is non-negotiable for me is sleep. I keep really, really regular sleep routine. I only have caffeine once a week now. And I remember the days when people talked about things like regular sleep, quitting caffeine, and I thought they were being kind of sanctimonious. But now I have experienced it for myself. These are just, sleep is non-negotiable. So it's a non-negotiable for me to function well. So I make the decisions that keep my sleep regular. And I am saying all of this as someone who went into menopause many years ago. So I've dealt with the sleep disturbances. I've had to find my way through that. Everybody's different, so I would say, of course, talk to your doctor about hormone replacement therapy. I take magnesium glycinate at night. That seems to make me really nice and sleepy. There's a lot of options that are out there for that, but I'm here to tell you that when I personally made the decision that I will have a solid winding down routine, when I personally stopped drinking caffeine, which the withdrawal for that, seriously, it's hard. It's no joke, but the benefits to my sleep are massive. it's just a non-negotiable for me to function well. So that's why it's such a priority. And then I've already mentioned that I build in space. I work from my home office, but this once a quarter booking an Airbnb, going offsite, getting an away day, that's really important. And then I also make sure that I get dates on the calendar for family vacations and things of that nature, because I love spending time with my daughter, with my husband, and I think we all need a vacation now and again. All right. So let's say you've done all the things at this point, okay? You've gone through and you're like, okay, I kind of like this. I've identified how I want to feel, the experiences that will bring those feelings to me, the goals, the things that would be really cool to do this year. And then you've started to tie goals to tiny habits. Here's how I will achieve that goal. Here's a tiny habit that I can commit to that will help me achieve that goal. Then you start to identify constraints, create space, prioritize, because, you're sitting down with your partner. Not everyone's going to get everything they want to do on their list. And you've built in support before you need it. You're clear on what your non-negotiables are. Do you need to get an away day every month? Do you need to make sure that you have like a dance class that you go to that's a way for you to burn off steam? Do you need to make sure that you and your bestie have time every single week to grab a breakfast on Saturday mornings? Whatever that is, to build in support. Last thing, you do the vibe check. So after doing some planning, my husband and I, we start to put dates on calendars. We've prioritized things. Now we pause and we breathe. And we kind of look at each month. We look at January. How's that feeling? Does it feel good? Does it feel exciting? Does it feel expansive? Does it feel like a life well lived? And if it doesn't, this is the time for us to be really honest about that. Because now is the time where we're going to shift the calendar and we're going to ask ourselves, what do we need to reprioritize? This is also a time for kind of using this as a when we pull this off, how cool is this going to be? I think it's also time for like a high five with your partner to go, this is going to be really fun for us. This is also a time for you to notice balance and proportion. I know a lot of moms who fill their lives with so much running around to get their kids to appointments. And something that at least my husband and I have really made a point of is we don't cram our daughter's life with a bunch of activities. That's not the life we want her to live. There is research out there that shows that when kids are overscheduled, it's not great for them. It's not the life we want to live. We don't want to spend hours every single week commuting to different activities. Now, if your kid really, really enjoys soccer practice and that's just part of your life to get them to and from multiple soccer sessions, and you're feeling good about that and your partner's feeling good about that, and you two are sharing the load for that, by the way, moms, do the vibe check on that. Because if you are over functioning to get everybody to their activities and the only thing your partner has on their plate is just coming and going from work each day, that's not equitable. And I feel very grateful to have a partner who is actively invested in an equitable partnership around division of labor. And at times, there have been times where I've needed to speak into, I feel like I'm doing too much of this. And he's certainly also done it as well. So the vibe check is really important. Does everyone feel good about this? And if not, let's get really honest about that and revisit it. And sometimes when my husband and I, we look at certain months and there's just not a lot of room for us to move things around. And so for those months, the vibe check we might need to do is, okay, this month is going to be really tight, but the first week of the following month is really open. And we're going to X off the dates so that there's nothing we can schedule in that first week of the next month, because that's when we know we're going to get our break after kind of an intense month. But the vibe check is really important. And when you start from that place of, I am creating a life that feels really good, the thing is, your year can only deepen. It starts to feel really exciting to go, this is the month I get to do this, and this is the month I get to do this other thing. It's not a have to, it's a get to. And I really do believe that if this is a practice that you sit down and commit to, and especially if you use resources like the free Courageous Living Planner that I mentioned that's available to subscribers, you will find that this becomes a year that feels purposeful. And all of the tense, tight, chaotic news headlines don't get to you as much. I'm not talking about like you do a spiritual bypass and you suddenly no longer care about the state of the world. I'm talking about it doesn't bring you down in the same way. You have concern, but it's an appropriate level of concern because your life is not being crowded out by too much going on. The world feels like it's falling apart. I haven't had time for myself in God knows how long. I'm constantly running around doing things for other people and nothing for myself. You have set a personal roadmap for the year ahead that includes creating space and time and attention for things that nurture your life. All right, I know that was a lot. The process that I'm describing here for me has usually been a multi-day process. So if you have just been pausing as you go here and knocking out these different pieces in an hour, you're a rock star. I would also recommend that perhaps you even listen to this episode in coordination with your partner so that your partner can really hear what you're aiming for. Again, if I can summarize all the different pieces that go into this, it's first, how do I want to feel? Next, it's what are the experiences that will create those feelings? And then it's what are the goals that tie into those experiences? And then you're creating tiny habits that will lead you to the goal. So the example I gave of if you have a goal of writing a book, a tiny habit that goes with that is to write for 20 minutes a day. Then you're sitting down with your partner. You're making a list of everything your partner wants to do, everything, if your kids are old enough, they want on their year, everything that you want for your year. And first you just start with everything and you start slotting it onto the calendar. Then you look at constraints and go, what's maybe a conflict? What's too tight? Let's identify space and start creating space. And sometimes that means moving things to a different month. Sometimes it means I prioritize this and I take this off the list entirely of things I'll do this year. And then you start building in the support. How will you stay connected to yourself? Support can look like therapy or coaching appointments set in advance. Support can look like away days where you have space of nothing going on. Support can look like I'm going to be really dialed in on exercise and sleep. And when you've done all of that and it's on the calendar with your partner or your family, you pause and you do a vibe check. Does this feel good? Do I look at each month and go, this is exciting to me. This is a life well lived. It's going to be so cool to look back after I pass each month or at the end of this year. And I'm going to go, wow, this was really great. Now, if this episode resonates, you can find more reflection tools and courage-based planning and guides over at yourcourageouslife.com. My book, The Courage Habit, is another resource that you could look at. The Courage Habit also has some goal-setting exercises in it, and you can find The Courage Habit on Amazon. It's also linked on my website. And I'm just so excited for the year that I'm about to have and that I think you can have if you start to put this process into place. You don't need a new year, new you. You don't need a bunch of empty goals or New Year's resolutions you won't follow through on. You need to feel good in your life. So thanks for listening, and here's to a great year ahead. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Before you go, would you take just one moment to give a rating in whatever podcast app you're listening in right now? It's a tiny action that helps to get this podcast out to more people. And I've got more for you. You can get access to free resources, audios, worksheets, and more for practicing courage in your everyday life. Head over to yourcourageouslife.com and become a subscriber, and you'll get access to an entire library of free courageous resources. And if you've ever thought about becoming a coach, or if you want to bring deeper presence and purpose to your work life so that corporate job doesn't feel quite so soul-sucking, check out the CLCC Coach Training Program at teamclcc.com. Thank you again for listening, And I hope that whatever today brings, you meet it with courage.